The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called in the middle of the night cycle, which meant the situation was dire. Ambassador Kelron of the Vexari Confederation stood before the assembled delegates, his translator implant struggling to keep up with the rapid-fire cascade of distress signals flooding the chamber. "We're losing," he transmitted through the neural network that connected all present. "The Krethak swarm has consumed 17 systems in the past month alone. Our fleets are scattered, our defenses shattered. We face extinction." Around the circular chamber, representatives from 43 species shifted in their various forms of discomfort. The holographic displays showed the inexorable advance of the Krethak, a hive-minded species that converted entire star systems into raw materials for their endless expansion. Red markers indicated fallen worlds. Yellow markers showed systems under siege. There were precious few green markers left. Commander Lissa of the Torvan Imperial Navy rose from her seat, her crystalline form refracting the emergency lighting into sharp angles. "We have thrown everything at them. Our best ships, our finest warriors, our most advanced weapons. They adapt to every strategy, overwhelm every defense. Perhaps it is time to accept that this cycle of civilization has reached its end." A wave of despair rippled through the assembled minds. It was High Counselor Vren of the Methodian Collective who finally broke the silence that followed. "There is one option we have not yet explored." All attention focused on Vren, whose species was known for logical analysis rather than emotional outbursts. The fact that he had spoken at all was significant. "The humans," Vren continued. "We could ask the humans for help." The silence that followed was different this time. Where before there had been despair, now there was confusion mixed with something that might have been hope or might have been mockery. It was impossible to tell through the neural network. Ambassador Kelron's translator worked overtime to convey his skepticism. "The humans, they have been part of the Galactic Council for barely 2 decades. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They have no fleet to speak of, no weapons that could match even our oldest designs. What could they possibly offer?" Vren's response was measured and precise, as befitted his species. "That is precisely the point. Every species in this chamber has been part of the galactic community for thousands of years. We have all followed similar technological paths, developed similar strategies, created similar weapons. The Krethak have adapted to all of them. The humans, however, developed in complete isolation. Their approach to warfare might be sufficiently different to provide an advantage." "What makes you think they would even help us?" Commander Lissa interjected. "We have treated them as curiosities at best, primitives to be patronized at worst, and now we come begging for their aid." Vren's form flickered with what passed for a shrug among his species. "We can only ask. The alternative is extinction." The vote was called. It passed by the narrowest of margins. Ambassador Kelron was tasked with contacting the human delegation and making the request. As the chamber emptied, and the delegates returned to their home worlds to await news of either salvation or doom, Kelron couldn't help but feel they were grasping at cosmic dust. The human embassy on Confederation Station was smaller than most, tucked into a corner of the diplomatic quarter that had once housed the representative from a species that had been extinct for 300 years. Ambassador Karen Price looked up from her desk as Kelron entered, her expression polite but guarded. "Ambassador Kelron," she said, gesturing to a chair that had been specifically modified to accommodate his physiology. "This is unexpected. The Council rarely contacts us directly." Kelron settled into the chair, his 4 arms arranging themselves in what he hoped was a non-threatening configuration. "Ambassador Price, I will be direct. The Galactic Council requires your assistance with a matter of some urgency." He proceeded to explain the situation with the Krethak, watching as Price's expression shifted from polite interest to focused concentration. When he finished, she sat back in her chair and steepled her fingers. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said. "The galaxy is facing an existential threat. You've tried everything in your considerable arsenal and failed. And now you're coming to us, the species you've consistently dismissed as technologically backward, to save you." The bluntness of her summary made Kelron's translator sputter. "When you phrase it that way, It does sound rather desperate. Because it is desperate. Price leaned forward. Ambassador, I'm not going to pretend humanity holds any grudges about being treated as the new kids who don't know what they're doing. We understand our position in the galactic hierarchy. But if you're asking us to commit our resources to this fight, I need to know that the Council is serious about this request. I assure you we are quite serious. Lives are at stake. Entire civilizations hang in the balance. Price nodded slowly. I'll need to contact Earth. This is beyond my authority to approve, but I can tell you that if humanity decides to help, we'll do it properly. No half measures. How long will this decision take? 72 hours, Price replied. I'll have an answer for you by then. Kelron departed, uncertainty gnawing at his thoughts. 72 hours. The Krethak would consume another half-dozen worlds in that time. But what choice did they have? 60 hours later, Ambassador Price requested an emergency meeting with the High Council. Kelron and the other senior members gathered in the same chamber where they had made their desperate decision to seek human aid. Price stood before them alone, no entourage, no display of military might. Just one woman representing her species. Members of the Council, she began, humanity has reviewed your request and the data you provided regarding the Krethak threat. We agree that the situation is dire and requires immediate action. A wave of cautious relief spread through the chamber. Commander Lissa spoke first. What forces can you commit? How many ships? One, Price said simply. The silence was absolute. Finally, Ambassador Kelron found his voice. I'm sorry, my translator must be malfunctioning. Did you say one? One warship, Price confirmed. The UNS Defiant. She's already en route to the front lines. Commander Lissa's crystalline form practically vibrated with indignation. One ship. We asked for your help in saving the galaxy and you send one ship. Do you think this is a joke? Price's expression remained neutral. I assure you, Commander, humanity takes this very seriously. The Defiant represents our best effort to assist the Council in this crisis. High Counselor Vren held up a hand, forestalling further outburst. Ambassador Price, perhaps you could explain why Earth believes a single vessel can make a difference when fleets of thousands have failed. Because it's not about the number of ships, Price replied. It's about what those ships can do. The Defiant is unlike anything in your fleets. She was designed with a different philosophy, different tactics, different weapons. You asked for humanity's help because we think differently. This is us thinking differently. What are her specifications? Vren asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his skepticism. What makes her so special? Price smiled slightly. You'll see. The Defiant will reach the Sigma Draconis system in approximately 48 hours. That's where the Krethak are currently massing for their next major offensive, correct? Kelron checked the latest reports. Yes, though I failed to see how one ship can possibly affect the outcome. We have 300 vessels defending that system, and our projections show a 60% probability of complete loss. Then I suggest you watch carefully, Price said. The Defiant's commander, Captain Gregory Walsh, has been fully briefed on the situation. He knows what needs to be done. As Price departed, the Council members looked at each other with a mixture of confusion and frustration. Commander Lissa was the first to speak. They mock us with this gesture. One ship. It's insulting. High Counselor Vren wasn't so sure. The humans are many things, but they are not given to empty gestures. If they truly believe one ship can help, then perhaps we should reserve judgment until we see what this Defiant can do. The UNS Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sigma Draconis system, exactly 47 hours and 32 minutes after Ambassador Price's meeting with the Council. Captain Gregory Walsh stood on the bridge, studying the tactical displays that showed the disposition of both Allied and enemy forces. Status report, he ordered. Commander Lisa Park looked up from her station. All systems nominal, Captain. We're registering 317 Allied vessels in defensive formation around the third planet. Krethak forces are massing in the asteroid belt, estimated at over 2,000 individual units. 2,000 to 300, Walsh mused. Not great odds. Have the Allied forces acknowledged our arrival? We're receiving a communication request from the fleet commander, Park replied. It's Admiral Kyrks of the Vexari. Put him through. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the four-armed form of a Vexari officer. His expression, as translated by the ship systems, was somewhere between disbelief and contempt. "You are the human response to our distress call?" Admiral Kyrks asked. "One ship," Walsh nodded calmly. "UNS Defiant reporting as requested. We're here to assist with the defense of this system. With respect, Captain, I suggest you withdraw to a safe distance. Your vessel appears to be a light cruiser at best. You'll be destroyed within minutes of engaging the Krethak. Appearances can be deceiving, Admiral." Walsh gestured to Park, who transmitted the Defiant's tactical integration protocols. "We'll be coordinating our efforts with your fleet. I suggest you maintain your defensive perimeter while we engage the enemy forces." Kyrks's translator struggled to convey his incredulity. "You intend to engage 2,000 enemy vessels? Alone?" "That's the plan." Defiant out, Walsh turned to his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Danny Crawford, plot an intercept course with the main Krethak formation. Let's get their attention." "Course plotted, Captain." Crawford's fingers danced across his console. "They're definitely noticing us now. Multiple targeting locks incoming." "Good." Walsh settled into his command chair. "All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. Time to show them what Earth can do." Aboard the Vexari flagship, Admiral Kyrks watched in mounting horror as the single human vessel accelerated directly toward the Krethak swarm. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Voss, was frantically updating the combat displays. "Admiral, the human ship is not evading. They're on a direct collision course with the enemy vanguard." "Suicide run," Kyrks muttered. "Foolish. Brave, but foolish." But what happened next defied everything Kyrks understood about space combat. The Defiant, which had appeared on their sensors as a relatively modest vessel perhaps 200 meters in length, suddenly underwent what could only be described as a transformation. Panels along its hull retracted, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden beneath layers of what his tactical officer was now identifying as adaptive armor. Admiral Voss said, his voice climbing several octaves, "I'm reading a massive energy buildup in the human vessel. Power output is off the scale." The Krethak swarm opened fire, thousands of directed energy weapons converging on the Defiant. But the beams that should have vaporized the human ship simply scattered against some kind of energy shielding that flickered into visibility like a soap bubble made of lightning. "What kind of shield is that?" Kyrks demanded. "Nothing should be able to withstand that kind of concentrated fire." The human ship returned fire, but what emerged from its weapons arrays was unlike any attack the Vexari had ever witnessed. Instead of energy beams or kinetic projectiles, the Defiant launched what appeared to be small spheres that moved through space at relativistic speeds. When they struck Krethak vessels, the results were catastrophic. Each sphere punched through Krethak armor as if it wasn't there, and a split second later, the target vessel exploded from the inside out. Not with the clean energy dispersion of an antimatter reaction, but with the messy violence of matter being torn apart at the molecular level. "What are those weapons?" Voss whispered, watching as another dozen Krethak ships disintegrated. Kyrks had no answer. His species had been waging war among the stars for 3,000 years, and in all that time, across all those conflicts, he had never seen anything like this. The Defiant moved through the Krethak formation like a predator among prey, each shot finding its mark with mechanical precision. But it wasn't just the weapons that amazed him. It was the way the human ship moved. Galactic vessels, including his own, maneuvered through space using conventional thrust and inertial dampening. The Defiant seemed to ignore those limitations entirely. It pivoted on its axis with impossible speed, accelerated and decelerated in ways that should have turned its crew into paste against the bulkheads. "They've solved the inertial problem," Lieutenant Voss said, his scientific training overriding his shock. "However they're doing it, their crew isn't experiencing the G-forces their maneuvers should be generating." The Krethak, to their credit, adapted quickly. It was their primary strength, and the reason they had been so successful against the Galactic fleets. They began coordinating their fire, trying to overwhelm the Defiant's shields through sheer volume. They altered their formations, attempting to box the human ship in and eliminate its maneuverability advantage. And the Defiant responded by changing tactics. New weapons emerged from its hull. These launched what appeared to be clouds of metallic particles that spread through space like fog. Any Krethak vessel that entered the clouds immediately lost power, drifting helplessly until the Defiant's primary weapons reduced them to scrap. "Are those nanomachines?" Voss asked. "That would explain the power loss. They're eating the enemy ships from the outside in." Kyrks couldn't respond. He was too busy watching as one human vessel systematically dismantled a force that should have been able to destroy it 1,000 times over. The Krethak had adapted to every weapon system the galaxy had thrown at them, but they had no adaptation for this because they had never encountered anything like it. 20 minutes into the engagement, the Krethak swarm did something unprecedented. They retreated. 2,000 ships, or what remained of them, disengaged from combat and began falling back toward the system's edge. The Defiant didn't pursue. It simply held position, its shields still flickering with power, its weapons still hot. Kyrks found his voice. Status of the Krethak forces. Voss checked his displays, double-checked them, then checked them again. "Admiral, the enemy has sustained 73% casualties, over 1,400 vessels destroyed or disabled. They're in full retreat. And the human vessel, no damage," Voss reported. "Their shields held. They took thousands of hits and their shields held." A communication request came through from the Defiant. Kyrks accepted it with something approaching awe. "Admiral Kyrks," Captain Walsh said, his expression showing no signs of stress or fatigue, "the immediate threat has been neutralized. We're picking up scattered Krethak units throughout the system. Would you like us to clean those up, or will your forces handle it?" "We'll handle it," Kyrks managed. "Captain, that was the most extraordinary display of combat prowess I have ever witnessed. What kind of ship is the Defiant?" Walsh smiled slightly. "She's what happens when you give a bunch of humans a problem to solve and unlimited resources to solve it. After we joined the Galactic Council, Earth's military planners studied everything we could about space combat. We noticed some gaps in the conventional approach, some possibilities that nobody seemed to be exploring. The Defiant is what came out of that research. Those weapons," Kyrks said. "That shielding. That propulsion system. Nothing in our databases matches any of it." "That's because we didn't try to match what already existed," Walsh explained. "We started from first principles and worked forward. Sometimes the best solution is the one nobody else has thought of yet." Defiant out. "Good hunting, Admiral." The news of what happened at Sigma Draconis spread through the Galactic Council faster than a supernova. By the time Captain Walsh and the Defiant returned to Confederation Station, the entire Council had assembled to witness their arrival. Ambassador Price stood beside High Counselor Vren in the observation gallery, watching as the human warship glided gracefully into its berth. "One ship," Vren said softly. "You sent one ship and it changed everything." Price nodded. "We sent our best, that's what you asked for." Commander Lissa approached them, her crystalline form catching the station's lighting in new patterns. "I owe humanity an apology. When you said one ship, I thought it was a joke or an insult. I understand now that it was confidence." "Well-earned confidence. No apology necessary," Price replied. "You had every reason to be skeptical. We're the new kids, remember, still figuring things out." Ambassador Kelron joined them, all four of his arms spread in a gesture of respect. "We have studied the battle data from Sigma Draconis. Your weapons technology alone represents a quantum leap beyond our current capabilities. The shielding system, the propulsion, the tactics. We would like to understand how humanity achieved this in such a short time." Price chose her words carefully. "When Earth joined the Galactic Council, we had a choice. We could try to catch up with everyone else's technology, spend decades or centuries climbing the same ladder you'd all already climbed. Or we could look at the ladder, realize it wasn't the only way up, and build our own path. You reinvented warfare," Vren observed. "We applied human thinking to an alien problem," Price corrected. "You all developed your military technology over thousands of years of galactic interaction. You shared knowledge, built on each other's work, created a common framework. The Krethak adapted to that framework because fundamentally, everyone was working from the same playbook. And humans aren't working from that playbook, Kyrk said, having arrived to join the conversation. We couldn't if we wanted to, Price admitted. We didn't have the time or resources to learn it properly. So we did what humans have always done when faced with a problem we don't understand. We got creative. We broke rules we didn't even know existed. We asked questions nobody else thought to ask. Questions like what? Commander Lissa asked. Like why does everyone use directed energy weapons when kinetic weapons at relativistic speeds are just as effective and harder to defend against? Why does everyone build ships that look like ships when the enemy doesn't care about aerodynamics? Why does everyone use the same faster-than-light technology when there are at least 3 other theoretical approaches that nobody bothered to test? Price smiled. The Defiant is what happens when you let engineers ignore conventional wisdom and just build something that works. The observation gallery had filled with representatives from dozens of species, all wanting to see the ship that had accomplished the impossible. Captain Walsh emerged from the airlock, his crew behind him. They looked surprisingly ordinary, just humans in military uniforms, nothing particularly special or impressive about them. Until you looked at their eyes, Vren thought. There was something in the way they carried themselves, something that spoke of absolute confidence backed by proven capability. Captain Walsh, Ambassador Kelron said, approaching the human officer. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you and your crew. You have given us hope when we had none. Walsh nodded respectfully. Just doing our job, Ambassador. Though I'll admit it felt good to finally show everyone what the Defiant can do. The Council would like to request additional assistance, Kelron continued. The Krethak remain a threat. One battle, however decisive, does not win a war. Understood. Walsh glanced at Price, who gave a slight nod. Earth is prepared to continue operations against the Krethak until the threat is eliminated. The Defiant will need some downtime for maintenance and resupply, but we can be back in action within a week. Commander Lissa stepped forward. Captain, with your permission, I would like to observe your operations. My species has much to learn from human tactics. Several other council members immediately made similar requests. Walsh looked slightly overwhelmed by the sudden attention. I'll have to clear that with command, but I don't see why it would be a problem. Fair warning, though, human military doctrine might seem strange compared to what you're used to. Strange is exactly what we need, Vren said. The Krethak have proven they can adapt to normal. Perhaps it's time the galaxy learned to be strange. Over the following months, the Defiant continued its campaign against the Krethak swarm. Each engagement followed a similar pattern. The human vessel would arrive at a contested system, identify the enemy forces, and proceed to dismantle them with clinical efficiency. The Krethak tried everything to counter the new threat. They massed their forces, overwhelming the humans with numbers. The Defiant adapted, deploying new weapon systems that could engage hundreds of targets simultaneously. They developed new armor specifically designed to resist kinetic impacts. The Defiant switched to energy weapons that operated on frequencies the Krethak had never encountered. They attempted ambushes, using asteroids and planetary rings for cover. The Defiant's sensor systems detected them from light years away. The problem for the Krethak was simple. They had evolved to fight galactic warfare, which followed certain patterns and assumptions. The humans didn't follow those patterns because they had never learned them. Every time the Krethak adapted to one human tactic, Captain Walsh would switch to something completely different, something that made no sense according to conventional military doctrine, but worked anyway. Ambassador Price found herself in an unusual position. Where once the human embassy had been a quiet backwater, now it was the busiest diplomatic facility on Confederation Station. Representatives from every member species wanted to establish closer ties with humanity. They wanted to understand human technology, human tactics, human philosophy. Most of all, they wanted to know if Earth had more ships like the Defiant. That's classified, Price would tell them, which was true but also not the whole truth. The reality was that the Defiant was unique, a prototype that had proven itself beyond all expectations. Earth had other warships, certainly, but none quite like her. Building more would take time, resources, and a willingness to think differently that wasn't easy to replicate. But the galaxy didn't need to know that. Sometimes the myth was more powerful than the reality. 6 months after the Battle of Sigma Draconis, the Krethak swarm made a strategic decision that surprised everyone. They retreated, not just from a single system or sector, but from galactic space entirely. Their last known position put them fleeing toward the intergalactic void, abandoning the conquest that had seemed inevitable just months before. The Galactic Council convened to discuss this unexpected turn of events. Admiral Kyrks presented the military analysis. "They're running," he said simply. "The Defiant's success has fundamentally altered their cost-benefit calculations. They can adapt to known threats, but humans keep introducing unknown variables. From the Krethak perspective, continuing the invasion is no longer worth the losses." High Counselor Vren looked at Ambassador Price, who sat quietly in the observers section. "Should we pursue them? Ensure they don't return?" Price shook her head. "The Defiant has done enough. She's a warship, not an extermination vessel. The Krethak are leaving. Let them go." Commander Lissa spoke up. "There is wisdom in this. We asked humanity to save us from the Krethak. They have done so, but they did not do it through genocide or total war. They did it by being sufficiently unpredictable that the enemy chose to leave rather than continue fighting. That is a lesson worth remembering." Ambassador Kelron stood, all four arms spread in the formal gesture of respect his species reserved for the highest occasions. "The Galactic Council officially recognizes humanity's contribution to our survival. Ambassador Price, your species has earned a permanent seat on this council and all the privileges that entails." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Price inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Earth accepts this honor, but I want to be clear about something. Humanity didn't save the galaxy alone. We provided a new perspective, yes. We introduced tactics the Krethak hadn't encountered, but your fleets held the line. Your people fought and died buying time for our intervention to work. This victory belongs to all of us." The gesture was noted and appreciated. Humanity could have claimed all the glory, leveraged their success into demands and concessions. Instead, they chose to be gracious. It was another example of humans thinking differently, and it earned them more goodwill than any number of impressive weapons demonstrations could have achieved. Captain Walsh stood on the bridge of the Defiant one last time before heading back to Earth. Commander Park was overseeing the final system checks before they departed Confederation Station. Their mission was complete. The Krethak were gone. The galaxy was safe for now. "You're thinking about something," Park observed. Walsh nodded. "I'm thinking about what happens next. We proved that human innovation can make a difference, but we also showed the galaxy that there are gaps in their collective knowledge, blind spots in their thinking. That's going to make some people uncomfortable. You think they'll turn against us?" "No," Walsh said after a moment. "I think they'll want to learn from us, which might be even more challenging. Teaching someone to think differently is harder than just showing them a new weapon." Lieutenant Crawford looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. New orders." Walsh took the data pad and read through the message. Then he smiled. "It seems Earth agrees with you, Lisa. We're not going home after all. Command wants us to stay on as advisors to the Galactic Defense Force, help them implement some of our innovations." Park grinned. "From outcasts to teachers in 6 months. Not bad, not bad at all." Walsh settled into his command chair. "Helm, delay our departure. It looks like we're staying a while longer. Time to show the galaxy what else humans can do." In the observation gallery above the docking bay, Ambassador Price stood with High Counselor Vren, watching as the Defiant powered down its systems for an extended stay. The warship that had changed everything looked almost peaceful now, its weapons retracted, its shields dormant. "You knew, didn't you?" Vren said. "When we first asked for help, you knew one ship would be enough." Price smiled slightly. "I knew that if any ship could make a difference, it would be the Defiant. Whether that would be enough was another question. Sometimes you have to trust in your people and hope for the best. The galaxy owes humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid." "The galaxy doesn't owe us anything," Price replied. "You asked for help, we provided it. That's what allies do. Though I'll admit, having that permanent council seat is a nice bonus." Vren's form flickered with what passed for amusement among his species. "You humans are strange. You save us from extinction and then act like it's no big deal. That's because it isn't a big deal, Price said. Not to us. We saw a problem, we solved it. Now we move forward. That's how humans work. They watched in silence as the Defiant's crew disembarked, heading to their temporary quarters on the station. Young men and women who had accomplished the impossible and didn't seem particularly impressed with themselves for doing it. "Counselor," Price said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you suggest asking us for help in the first place? When everyone else had given up hope, you were the one who said humanity might have an answer." "Why?" Vren considered the question carefully. "Because I studied your history," he said finally. "Before humanity joined the Council, I made it my business to understand your species. And what I learned was that humans have a remarkable ability to find solutions to impossible problems. You thrive on challenges that would break other species. You're at your best when the odds are against you. That's because we're too stubborn to give up," Price said with a laugh. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it's because your species hasn't had time to become complacent. The rest of us have been part of galactic civilization for so long that we've forgotten how to truly innovate. We refine, we optimize, but we rarely revolutionize. Humans still remember how to revolutionize because you haven't unlearned that skill yet. You make it sound like something we should be careful not to lose." "It is," Vren said seriously. "The greatest danger humanity faces is not external threats or hostile species. It's the slow creep of conventional thinking. Don't let the galaxy teach you to be normal, Ambassador. The galaxy needs you to stay strange." Price looked out at the stars visible through the observation window, thinking about Earth, about humanity's place in this vast galactic community, about the future they were building together. "We'll do our best," she promised. "After all, staying strange is what we do best." The story of how one human warship turned the tide against an unstoppable enemy spread throughout the galaxy. It became legend, the details growing more impressive with each retelling. Some said the Defiant could destroy planets with a single shot. Others claimed it could travel through time or phase through solid matter. The truth was both simpler and more profound. The Defiant was just a ship, crewed by regular people who happened to be human. What made it special wasn't some impossible technology or mystical power. It was the willingness to question assumptions, to look at old problems with fresh eyes, to be creative when creativity was needed most. In the end, that was humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy. Not weapons or tactics or technological breakthroughs, though those certainly helped. It was the reminder that there was always another way, another angle, another solution if you were willing to look for it. The galaxy had cried that they were losing the war. Humanity had sent one warship. And somehow, against all logic and expectation, it had been exactly enough. Because sometimes the best answer to an impossible problem is the one nobody else would think to try.